I was the only one who came to my husband's funeral. Not our son, not our daughter, not a single grandchild. Just me, standing beside his casket as a bitter wind tore through the chapel gardens, as if even the sky itself could not stand to remain. The funeral director shifted his weight, his gaze darting from the vacant pews to my stony face. He cleared his throat softly. "Should we delay a little longer, Mrs. Holloway?" "No," I replied. "Begin." George despised lateness. He was a man of precision until his final breath, swallowing his medication by the clock, tuning into the evening news at 6 on the dot, placing his house shoes neatly together before sleep. A creature of routine, a man of quiet honor. Now, a man being sent off into silence, alone. I took a seat in the front row, the 5 chairs around me, starkly empty. The minister's words felt hollow, recited without heart. The flowers were too bright, the casket too glossy. I could almost hear George's soft chuckle at the spectacle. And then I imagined him looking around, brow furrowed, demanding to know where the children were. Where were they? A text arrived that morning from our son, Peter. A single cold sentence. "Sorry, Mom. An urgent matter came up. Can't be there. No further details. No phone call." I pictured him at his desk, or more likely on a golf course, acting as if his father's passing was merely a minor disruption. Our daughter, Celia, sent nothing at all. 2 days prior, a voicemail, her voice light, airy, indifferent. "Mom, I simply can't cancel my salon booking. You know how rearrangements upset my whole week. Give Dad my love. I'll pop by next week." Next week, as if the departed keep a calendar. After the brief, hollow service, I walked alone behind the men carrying the casket. I did not weep, not because my heart wasn't broken, but because I'd been mourning for months. There is a grief so profound, it becomes a still, heavy weight within your soul. An anchor, lodged deep. That day, I was already entombed by it. The graveyard was nearly empty. An elderly caretaker watched from afar, one hand on a shovel. The casket lowered. Quiet prayers murmured into the wind. Earth met polished wood. A will of iron met absolute silence. I remained long after everyone else had gone. The heels of my shoes sank into the soft ground, and the wind tugged at my coat. The headstone would come later. For now, only a plaque. George Holloway, beloved husband, a father, now forgotten. Forgotten. The word lodged in my mind. Sharp, persistent. Back in our house, the silence was deafening. It wasn't empty. It was loud. Every object seemed to remember him. His armchair, still angled toward the television. His slippers, side by side beneath it. The remote, precisely where he left it. I stared at it for a long time. Then I went to the kitchen. I opened a bottle of fine wine, the kind we reserved for special guests. There would be no guests now. I poured a glass, sat down, and for reasons I couldn't explain, I opened my phone, a habit I almost never had. Celia's profile appeared first. A photo, cocktails raised, friends laughing in bright daylight. Weekend brunch with my favorites, endless mimosas, living our best lives. Peter had posted too. A golf course, gleaming clubs, perfect form, perfect weather, business is good. I stared until the images blurred, colors bleeding like a cruel watercolor. Then I turned it off, took another sip of wine, and looked up at the photograph on the wall. George and me, our 40th anniversary. Before the rose bushes, he nurtured himself. They once bloomed a brilliant crimson. Now they were bare. Tomorrow, I thought, I'll call the attorney. I will make adjustments, quietly and with the same integrity George always possessed. Because if I was the only one who stood beside him in the end, then I would be the only one to carry out the true intent of his legacy and mine. That evening, I sat alone in our kitchen, the room where George peeled apples with the surgeon's care, slicing perfect pale moons and arranging them on a plate. He always offered me the finest piece, the one that caught the most sun, he'd say. Now, the fruit bowl held only overripe pears, their skins sagging. The quiet wasn't new. George had been gone 2 weeks before the service, and in those days, I'd already begun to learn the contours of solitude. But tonight, it pressed down with a heavier, crueler weight. I couldn't erase the image of those empty chairs, nor Celia's breezy message. Had I failed as a mother, or had she lost something essential, something no one could return? Peter's text still glowed on my screen. Something came up. Was it shame? Apathy? Or that quiet cruelty that comes from simply not caring enough? I poured another glass of wine, not to drown my sorrow, but to sharpen my resolve. I walked to our bedroom, opened George's desk drawer. Everything was as he left it. Neat, purposeful, intentional. Behind the files, a thin sealed folder, labeled estate. Inside, copies of our will, a list of beneficiaries, the house, the car, the savings, the lake cabin. Every piece of a life carefully built and meant to be respected. Peter, Celia, their names written there like promises carved in stone, but stones can be overturned. As I held those papers, my hands trembled, not from age, but from betrayal, because betrayal has a pulse, and mine was thrumming in my ears. I rose and pulled a storage bin from the closet, old photographs, fragments of a life that once felt infinite. Birthdays, holidays, George holding our children when they were small, Celia tugging at my sleeve, Peter asleep in his father's lap, a book open on his chest. We were a family once. Perhaps I'd been willfully blind to the distance that grew between then and now. Maybe love doesn't shatter in storms. Maybe it fades, like fabric left too long in the sun until one day you can't recognize its color. I picked up a photo, George and 12-year-old Peter, fishing, George's arm around our son, pointing into the water, his face full of patience, of pride. That man deserved more than a hollow chapel and a solitary grave. I set the photo down and reached for the phone. It was nearly midnight. It didn't matter. I called Thomas Fields, our attorney. It rang and rang, then voicemail. Thomas, it's May Holloway. I need to revise my will, urgently. Please call me first thing in the morning. I ended the call and stood by the window. Moonlight silvered the tops of the rose bushes George planted years ago. They'd begun to fade after his passing, not from neglect, but as if in mourning. I knew I should prune them, encourage new growth, but not tonight. Tonight I would let the dead things fall. Tomorrow I would begin cutting away everything that no longer deserved a place in my life or in his memory. The attorney's office smelled of old leather and polished wood. Thomas had known us for over 30 years. Meticulous, trustworthy, and like me, weary of kindness with conditions. May, he said, rising. You're early. This couldn't wait, I replied. I received your message. You wish to revise your will? Yes, Peter and Celia are to be removed. Entirely. You're certain? I buried my husband alone. Our children didn't come. Not a call. Not a flower. They were busy. They have forfeited their claim. Then we'll draft a full amendment. You wish them removed from every provision? Everything. The accounts, the house, the cabin, all of it, understood. Shall we redirect the assets? I thought of Ethan, my grandson, Celia's boy, the only one who visited without an agenda. He mowed my lawn in summer, brought me books, and once told me, "Grandma, I like our talks more than anyone else's." "Yes," I said. A trust for Ethan. The house, the cabin, the savings, all of it. Protected, inaccessible to his parents. That can be arranged. An irrevocable trust, education and medical access, full control at 30, suitable. Perfect. We review documents, clause after clause. When you have stood beside an open grave alone, no legal form can intimidate you. You are armored in clarity. As we finished, Thomas looked up. "May, if I may, this is decisive. Many would hesitate. I've spent 80 years keeping the peace. It buried me long before it buried George." He asked no more questions. Outside, the morning sun stretched across the pavement like gold threads. I stood a moment, letting the air wash over me. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was simply resolved. Finished waiting for my children to become people they never intended to be. Finished mistaking obligation for love. Finished writing checks with my heart and getting silence in return. The bank was a temple of quiet efficiency, polished floors, muted voices, everything in its place as George would have liked. "Mrs. Holloway, I was surprised by your request," Mr. Jansen said. "Surprise can be good," I said. He led me to his office, dark wood, a brass lamp, a faint scent of paper and leather. "I understand you wish to make changes," he said. "The changes are decided. I'm here to ensure they're done correctly. You've revoked linked transfers, removed Peter and Celia, and established an irrevocable trust for Ethan. It's quite a shift. I'm quite a woman," I said. "You are. We'll make it ironclad. Education, housing, healthcare allowances until he's 30. Full access after. Protected from external claims. Perfect. We signed each page. Deliberate, final, freeing." "May, if it's not too personal, is this driven by anger?" he asked. "No, it's driven by clarity outside. The light felt clean, warmer somehow. The corner table at the cafe where George and I used to sit still existed. I ordered a cappuccino, sat alone, and watched the world move. A young mother pushed a stroller, hair in disarray, eyes tired but kind. I felt no envy, only recognition. I sipped my coffee, and for the first time in years, the hour belonged entirely to me. Later, my neighbor Lorraine appeared with a tin of lemon shortbread. "I saw Peter's car earlier. Did he bring condolences or just arguments?" she asked. "Neither," I said. "Only a well-rehearsed speech." We sat with tea. I told her everything about the will, the trust, the truth. "It was time, May," she said. I didn't have a breakdown. I peeled away everything that wasn't love. "They'll call you cruel," she said. "Let them. What they won't say is that I kept them afloat, even when I was barely keeping myself above water. That night, I found an old letter from George, written long ago. "May, this house is never empty when you're in it. You are its foundation and its shelter. Even when you feel unseen, I see you." I read it 3 times. The house was quiet, but no longer empty. The first snow arrived quietly, a thin white layer across the garden. Ethan was outside, measuring the porch railing he'd been fixing, muttering to himself like his grandfather used to. A month had passed since I signed the papers. The world had not ended. My children's silence had deepened into something hollow, but it no longer hurt. Let them tell their version. I have the truth, and the truth doesn't need to shout. "Grandma, come look. The railing's done," Ethan called. It leaned slightly left. Your grandfather would have called it crooked, I said. So does everyone in this family, he laughed. I laughed too, a full, genuine laugh I hadn't heard in years. We spent the afternoon in small, quiet tasks, the kind of moments that never make photographs, but define a life. That night, after he left, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote one final letter. Not to my children, not even to George, but to the woman I used to be. You tried for longer than you needed to. You bent yourself into shapes that weren't your own. You gave when you should have said no, but you also loved with a fierce heart, and that was never a mistake. Now you are free, free to dance in quiet kitchens, to plant things simply because they grow, to give without guilt, to rest without apology. You are not cruel, you are not bitter, you are clear, and that, finally, is enough. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer, a lighthouse for my own soul. Before bed, I stepped outside one last time. The stars were sharp and cold in the winter sky. I looked up and said softly, he would have been proud. Not of my strength, not of my choices, but of my peace. Because finally, I had chosen a peace that was steady, quiet, and entirely my own.